The Christopher Nolan-style Batman reboot, The Batman, from director Matt Reeves and star Robert Pattinson, is upon us. It's been a long time coming. Not only did Matt Reeves take his sweet time delivering the script, filming was shut down several times over due to various lockdown restrictions, during which Pattinson kept us entertained with interviews from his hotel room, coming across like a loon, in what I can only presume must have been a sample of his Kurt Cobain-esque take on The Dark Knight. But now the movie is here, and according to the very first batch of reviews, it was the best Batman movie ever, bar none. By the second cycle of reviews though, it had developed some third act and other issues. Will more issues appear as ever more reviews roll in? I don't know, because I won't have the opportunity to see the movie until this Friday. My associate Tom, however, has seen it already, and in this review of his, he will, after establishing where he stands on Batman, break down the good, the bad, and the nitty-gritty about The Batman.
As a lifelong Batman fan, my earliest exposure would have been the Super Friends and Adam West versions, but being a child of the 80s, the 1989 film will always hold a special place in my heart. I've never been an avid follower of the comics per se, but have read a few and some of the graphic novels, and have a fairly decent working knowledge of the character and the world that Batman inhabits. In the last few years, the deconstruction of superheroes has become more and more commonplace, and with the Nolan trilogy, as much as I enjoyed it for the most part, Dark Knight Rises withstanding, it was so grounded in reality it really was so much different than any other major superhero film before it. I haven't really seen a lot of Matt Reeves or Robert Pattinson's work for that matter, full disclosure, but was a very big fan of the newer take of the Planet of the Apes franchise, and the last two of which were helmed by Reeves. Outside of that, though, I have no real frame of reference, other than he's a JJ acolyte, and of course the fact that he didn't begin the new version of the Apes franchise, he inherited it, even if his voice is the most prominent. Now here we are with the third film since 1966 to be called Batman, albeit with the before it. Until Batfleck's fate is certain, is the in the title trying to tell us something? Regardless, how does this film stack up overall and against the previous incarnations? Well, I'm about to give you my spoiler-free reaction to the film. First, we'll go through a quick synopsis of the movie, then I'll start with the good, and then get into the bad. Batman investigates a series of murders that leads him to Gotham's underworld. A sadistic killer leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues that are addressed to the Caped Crusader himself. As evidence begins to uncover the past of many of the key players, our heroes, reluctant and full of vengeance, must join forces to uncover the plot that is tearing the city apart both literally and figuratively. Overall, the story is easy enough to follow. It appears to be heavily influenced by The Long Halloween. For the most part, the main performances are good to serviceable. Kravitz, Turturro, and Farrell turn in good work. Most of the supporting cast is decent, including Jeffrey Wright, the always excellent Andy Serkis, and Paul Dano does tune the scenery quite well. The cinematography does add an overall character to the city of Gotham we probably haven't seen since the 1989 film, or at least Batman Begins. Even if you ignore the film's running time, percentage-wise, this is the most screen time we probably get to see Batman doing Batman things. There is a lot to admire here. Getting to see Batman be a detective is a plus. Working closely with Gordon is also a treat, but sadly, that's pretty much the good. There are varying degrees of the bad, and some of it could have been easily handled with a nice tighter cut. This, I feel, is going to be the film's biggest complaint, the running time. This movie feels like a Snyder film, right down to the slow-mo stuff. So those fans will feel very comfortable and at home with the look. Most people might find it a bit too murky and long-winded in the end. Some scenes and setups linger way too long, inflating some of the screen time for sure. The first act flows decent enough, but once the third act hits, the film feels almost like a different movie. It begins to overstay its welcome 2 hours in. That isn't to say the film is bad overall, but the running time does hurt the movie. This feels like a very overindulgent director's cut. For some, that will be a blessing. For others, it will be mind-numbing, if not, in the very least, patience and bladder testing. Sadly, also, most of the characters are very generic, even the better performances. Without getting into spoilers, some could have just been any character at all. In fact, the fact that they may be popular, well-known characters is almost irrelevant. Some of the rest of the performances are so in the tone of cop thrillers like Seven that it does clash a bit with Batman's world. Pattinson is the worst part of the film in my opinion. His performance isn't horrible overall, but my inability to separate his image from Edward Sparklepants is just too strong. Some may be able to overlook this, and for those who can, his performance will probably seem decent enough, if not much more than any previous Batman brought to the table, but not the worst by far. The overly serious tone does clash with some of the scenes that we should enjoy. Many of the film's so-called twists I seen coming from a mile away. I felt like it was always a step ahead of the Riddler the entire time. This made me feel the runtime even more. To get into too much more would venture into spoiler territory, so I don't want to do that. In the end, I can recommend the film to most hardcore fans of Batman. Snyder fans may enjoy it the most, but casual viewers or the general audience may not like the movie as much. In the end, if you can get past Pattinson and are a Snyder-esque fan, you may enjoy it. For me personally though, the tonal clash was just too much overall. But at the same time, this is still the most Batman we've ever got to see Batman be Batman on screen since probably the 1966 series or the animated series for that matter. Too bad it just feels weird juxtaposed against the overly grounded feeling that Reeves is striving for. There are some great action sequences and some not so great, but there is also a lot of downtime as well with just brooding and rehashing of previous scenes. Because of that, the Batman does seem overindulgent to pretentious at times. Although it is seemingly epic and sophisticated, it's undercut by a cookie-cutter plot, and the running time kills the momentum of the movie overall. The third act makes the Batman feel like it's 3 episodes of a streaming series crammed together more than an actual movie. Some people will really get into the grungy, dour tone, and if you like Batman punching people, well, you'll get plenty of that here. The movie doesn't make any major mistakes or destroy too many characters' legacies overall, so that's a plus for what it's worth. But the movie isn't very family friendly. Keep this in mind if you're curious if your kid can handle the dark and violent tone. It's comparable to the Nolan and Snyder films, so plan accordingly.
For more on The Batman, join us on the March 2nd installment of our tri-weekly live show Midnight's Edge in the Morning, where we'll be discussing the movie with Chris Gore. For now, let us know how excited you are for The Batman in the comments.